When you moved back to Mesa, regardless of where you lived, was the sexual relationship still ongoing?
It was ongoing.
Were you acting as a couple in public?
No, we were even more clandestine.
More clandestine.
Yes.
And this clandestine sexual relationship, where was this by and large happening?
At his house.
And how would it generally work? Would you come over at a certain time? How did that work?
Typically, this cycle began to develop where there would be a fight, and then we would make up, and it would turn sexual, and then everything would be okay for a little while.
Now, the sexual relationship you were having with Mr. Alexander in the summer of 2007, did this include oral sexual contact?
Yes.
Anal sex?
Eventually, but I'm trying to remember if we did that summer. It was around that time, but I don't remember exactly when.
And did it include penile vaginal intercourse?
Eventually. It did one time, actually, that month.
Okay. Now, when you moved back to Mesa, did you find a job?
I did finally toward the end of August, and not right away, but I did.
And where were you working?
At P.F. Chang's.
And apart from P.F. Chang's, did you have any other sources of income?
Yes.
What was that?
Travis offered to pay me to clean his house.
And was there a set upon hourly wage for that?
Yes. He was going to pay me $200 extra a month to come over twice a week. I can't remember how many hours, but when you did the math, it equaled $12.50 an hour.
Okay. And you were also having a sexual relationship with him at this time, right?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Okay.
Jodi, I want to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 395. Could you take a look at that? See if you recognize that.
Yes.
What is that?
It's an email he sent me.
Regarding what?
This is kind of a joke about my uniform for cleaning his house.
Your uniform what? For cleaning his house?
Yes.
What did he want you to wear?
He wanted me to wear one of those French maid outfits.
And do you remember when he sent you this email?
It would have been sometime in early August.
Move to admit Exhibit 395, excuse me, if I said 393 earlier.
No objection to the photographic portion of the email, but objection to the hearsay or the written comment.
Approach.
Jodi, let's back up a step. When Mr. Alexander proposed this arrangement to you in August of '07, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Did you accept this arrangement?
I hesitated, but when he said it's $200 extra a month, I said yes, because I needed money.
Okay. And at the time you accepted this offer Mr. Alexander made to you, were you still sexually active with him?
Yes.
When you were cleaning the house, working as his maid, if you will, Did he ever express a desire to have sex with you while you were working for him?
Objection to the characterization of maid.
Occasionally.
And how did you feel about that? You're there to clean his house, and he's having sex with you.
It didn't bother me. We were still intimate, and he's paying attention to me. He's being nice. He's focused on me, making me feel attractive. So it wasn't unpleasant.
Did he ever ask you to wear a particular uniform?
Yes.
How would you describe that uniform for us?
The picture he sent me was of a woman, a voluptuous woman with long blonde hair, a low-cut French-maid outfit. She had stockings that went up to her thighs, stilettos. It was a black and white outfit with a little white apron. I think she had her foot up on something.
Julie, I'm going to show you a picture from Exhibit 395.
Objection. This is not an evidence. It cannot be published to the jury.
You just didn't object to it a few minutes ago.
Counsel approach, please. I'm going to ask that you go back to the jury room, use your card to let yourselves in. We will be back with you shortly. Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Exhibit 395.001 is admitted. Mr. Nurmi, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Jodi, before our break, we talked about a picture you received in an email. If I may approach, Your Honor.
Okay.
Of a woman in a French maid uniform. Do you recognize that as being that picture?
Yes.
When you received this email from him, was this before or after you began working for him?
It was after we made the agreement, but before I started.
How did you feel in receiving this?
I just kind of laughed. I think he meant it as a joke.
You felt like he meant it as a joke.
Yes.
Did your feelings on that subject change when he was having sex with you while you were supposedly working for him?
Well, on the uniform, no, but as far as the implication, I mean, I kind of knew that was implied sometimes.
That was kind of implied sometimes, meaning if he was paying you to clean his house and you were available to have sex with him, that was part of the deal?
Objection leading.
Rephrase.
Did you believe when you were working for him, that because you were working for him, he's entitled to have sexual access to you?
I wouldn't say that. I needed money. We were already
Objection,
intimate.
Ms. Scott. She said she would say that.
Sorry.
Ask another question.
Why did you not feel that way?
I was already intimate with him, and I had feelings for him, so it wasn't, I didn't correlate the two. Usually I stuck with my duties there. It was generally during the day. He worked also. I didn't want to distract him from that. Sometimes he would come to me, or he would bump into me suggestively and say, oh, excuse me. And then it would happen again, and then it would lead to something. Sometimes he would just come up and kiss me.
Okay. How long did you clean his house, work as his maid?
Almost the entire time that I lived in Mesa.
Okay. Did he always pay you?
He always paid me in one form or another.
What do you mean by that?
Sometimes, well, it was usually cash, but sometimes, well, we went on trips together, so sometimes we always split the trips 50-50. He kept meticulous track of the cost. He could always figure it down to the dollar, who owed who what, and how we reached the figure. So sometimes if he owed me money for the house, he would just eat the cost on traveling.
Okay. But there was always financial compensation for this, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, earlier today, you mentioned that when you moved back to Mesa, there was a clandestine sexual relationship that went on behind closed doors of his bedroom.
Yes.
Was there a sexual relationship that took place in other places besides just his bedroom?
Yes.
Where did those occur?
Usually when we,
Recommendation, time, or date when this happened.
Sustained.
Where else did you have sexual interaction with Mr. Alexander?
sometimes it was,
Objection. Same objection, we just need to know when.
Well,
Overruled. Answer the question.
sometimes it was in my car, in parking lots. Sometimes it was when we traveled, and sometimes it was at my house in Mesa.
now when you mentioned your car, earlier in your testimony you told us about the interaction that took place after he gave you the Book of Mormon and you went to Starbucks. Is that what we're talking about, or are we talking about other occasions in your car?
Other occasions, but the same kind of thing.
And did those also occur after you moved back to Mesa, or did those occur before you moved to Mesa?
I know they occurred after I moved to Mesa.
You also mentioned that sexual behavior was going on through these trips you took with him as well, right?
Yes, that's right.
And you also mentioned your house in Mesa. Is that the one you shared with Rachel, or are you speaking to the other home that you moved into a couple weeks later?
The other home, he wouldn't go to Rachel's house.
Is there a specific location in this home that your sexual behavior with Travis took place?
Yes, in my bedroom.
Did it happen anywhere else besides your bedroom?
Yes, a couple times. He,
Where did these occur? Besides your bedroom, where in your home?
the front porch.
And how did you wind up having sexual encounters with Travis on his front porch? On your front porch, excuse me.
It was something he wanted to try since I had known him since 2006. It was something he expressed that he wanted to do. He had a list of fantasies that he wanted to fulfill. And he wanted to show up, get out of his car. Sorry.
Ask another question.
No need to apologize, Jodi. What was this? Describe for us, if you will, this fantasy he had involving you being on the porch of your home.
Okay. It was, he wanted to drive up to the house. something we couldn't do it in Palm Desert. So now that I was in Mesa, it was a different kind of porch. It was more private. There was a huge column, a big square stucco column that offered more privacy. There was a big bush that created a shadow from the streetlight, so this would occur at night, late at night. And so he wanted to drive up to the home. He wanted to get out of the car, have me come out of the house, give him oral sex, and he wanted to ejaculate on my face and then get back in his car and drive away without saying a single word.
And were you to be dressed during these interactions, or naked, or what was his fantasy?
I was dressed.
And how many times did he do this?
2 or two or three times. I can only remember 2 specifically.
Tell us about those 2 occasions. Tell us about the first occasion.
Well, the first occasion occurred just like I described, and we talked later the next day. The second occasion, after he was done, he dropped something near me and got into his car and left. And so I picked up whatever it was he dropped and took it inside to find out what it was.
What was it?
It was Toblerone.
So he ejaculated on your face and threw you some candy?
Pretty much.
Is this hard for you to describe?
Yeah, in front of my mom and dad it is.
You mentioned that Mr. Alexander had other fantasies that he described for you. Can you tell us another one of those fantasies?
He wanted to do the mile high, which we never did. He wanted to pull off of a freeway on a remote highway somewhere and have sex on the hood of the car, which we didn't do. But he also wanted to have sex on the freeway while driving, which we did. It was the 10 or the 40. We were driving east across Texas.
Oral sex?
No, I think it was vaginal.
What other fantasies did he have?
He wanted me to wear the boys' underwear. He had a lot of anal sex fantasies. He wanted me to wear the boys' underwear and have anal sex, and he wanted to wear his, he had a lot of nice suits because he was in prepaid legal, and he had tailored shirts with his initials stitched into the cuffs, and he wanted me to perform oral sex on him in his office while he was wearing those suits.
And did you comply with that desire? of
Yes.
his?
Yeah, that one we did many times. Probably his whole wardrobe.
Now, we were talking about the boys' underwear and anal sex. Is this the boys' underwear that you received back on Valentine's Day?
Yes.
Did he ever explain to you why he wanted you to wear this underwear and why he wanted to have anal sex with you when you were wearing this underwear?
He just said it was hot.
He didn't offer any other explanation at the time?
Not at that time.
You mentioned, well, let me ask you this. How did you feel about having anal sex with Travis when you were wearing this boy's Spider-Man underwear?
Well, after we began to do that more regularly, he used lubrication that time, so it wasn't painful. And I don't know, I guess there were times when I enjoyed being with him, so I was willing to do, I enjoyed making him happy, so I was willing to do things that he liked to do. And while he did those things that he liked to do, he was paying attention to me, so I got something out of it too, I guess, in that regard.
Okay. So, based on what you're telling us, are you saying that he treated you differently before, during, and after these encounters, or just before and during? You said he was paying a different amount of attention to you. Can you maybe describe for us what you mean by that?
Yes. When he was in the mood or turned on, then he was very nice and paid attention to me. Sometimes when we got together, he was very loving and romantic. Sometimes it was just animalistic. Afterward, usually when he was done for a while.
You mean done sexually or done being nice?
Done, he didn't turn mean, but done being nice, I would say.
Okay. And then would it be fair to say that when he wanted sex again, he became nice?
Always.
Once you moved back to Mesa, you were having this clandestine sexual relationship, and you weren't his girlfriend, right?
Yes, that's right.
Why was this okay with you?
I guess I was still in love with him, and I would go on dates occasionally with other people, but there was no spark there, I think because Travis had my heart, and I'm a monogamous person, so I'm sleeping with Travis, so there's not really any room in my heart or my mind or in my life. That wasn't making room for anybody else. So that's kind of just how it continued.
So was there ever any thought in your head, this isn't right, I need to stop this relationship?
There were times when it seemed very unhealthy, and I did have those thoughts.
Did you ever vocalize those thoughts to Travis?
Eventually I did, yes.
Let's talk about this time period as well, because you mentioned you were traveling with Mr. Alexander even after you moved back to Mesa. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And after you moved back to Mesa in late summer of 2007, where did you and Travis travel to? What were some of the destinations you went to?
Well, first we went to Las Vegas for the convention, which was in early September again. I went to the executive director banquet with him again. And after that, the weekend following Las Vegas, there was going to be another recap, but we ditched that and went with Dan and Desiree to Havasu Pie.
Okay. Where else did you go?
In October, we went to New Mexico, to Albuquerque for the Balloon Fiesta. We went to Santa Fe to 10,000 Wave Spa. We saw Route 66. There might have been another place. These were all places that were in the book, 1,000 Places. We began calling it the list, so we were just checking places off the list.
And that was kind of motivating your travel to these spots, is that correct?
Yes.
Before we get too far down the road to other places you traveled, I want to show you what's been marked exhibits 434 and 431. Be so kind to take a look at these. And what you recognize exhibit 434 to be?
That's Travis and I at the Executive Director Banquet in March 2007.
And exhibit 431?
That's Travis and I at the Balloon Fiesta in Albuquerque.
And when was that?
That would be October 2007.
I would move to admit exhibits 431 and 434.
No objection.
431 and 434 are admitted.
Now, you just mentioned the Executive Director's Ball in 2007. Is this what we're seeing here?
Yes.
Is it hard for you to look at that picture?
Objection.
Approach. Overruled.
Why?
Oh, it's just very sentimental. It's about happier times. When you just look back, you don't think that it would end up the way it did.
Let me show you what's been admitted as Exhibit 431. You take a look at that, please. Is that hard to look at?
Yeah.
Why?
We had a really bad fight that morning, but it turned out better, and we had a pretty good day afterward.
How long was this trip?
I think just the weekend. I don't recall specifically. It wasn't very long.
Based on the picture, one might assume that you were acting as a couple during this trip. Is that true?
Yes.
Did that end when you got back to Mesa?
Yeah, it did. Well, it depends on the time.
Well, what do you mean by that?
I was still coming over to his house. His roommate tried to warn me that he was seeing other people. So, I mean, it was...
Well, what I was asking you is if this public affection, that sort of thing, ended when you got back to Mesa.
Yes, it did, unless we were in his room.
Okay. So affection was okay so long as you were in his room or on your porch where he was ejaculating on your face, right?
Well, yeah, but the latter wasn't really affection that much.
Okay. That brings up a good point. You come out on the porch, you fulfill his fantasies, he ejaculates on your face and throws some chocolate at you. How do you feel after that?
I couldn't help thinking that it was kind of like a prostitute. But I didn't. I put that out of my mind and just chalked it up to one of his little antics that he did.
Chalked it up to one of his little antics.
Yes.
Was there ever a point in time in your mind that you said, enough of these little antics, I'm done with this guy?
Maybe farther down the road, but before that, no.
Not at that point in time.
No, if anything, we increased.
The what?
If anything, we increased with those kinds of things, the antics, all that. If you can call them antics.
Well, let me ask again something I asked earlier. Had he been physically abusive with you up to this point in time, late summer of 2007?
No.
Okay.
Well, he grabbed my wrist one time, but I didn't consider it abusive, so I don't know. That's
Well, when did that occur?
at the convention in Oklahoma City in March 2007.
Describe those circumstances for us.
He and I were hanging out at the Sheraton. This was 2 nights after the drunk lady fell all over him. And so we were just hanging out with other colleagues and friends. And I had to use the restroom, so I went to the same restroom that I ran to a few nights before. It's sort of by a bar that's at the lobby. And so this is Saturday night now. And by Saturday night, a lot of people are partying. Convention's over. Everyone's going to leave Sunday. So there were a lot of people. There was a big crowd, a lot of people that were drinking and just having fun and being social. And as I was making my way back through the crowd, I heard somebody call my name. And I stopped and looked around to see who it was. And it was Abe, the guy I had gone on a date with some months earlier. And we talked briefly. And I don't remember if he had heard about what happened or if I told him about what happened, but he just was listening, and he said, "You deserve better," and I said, "Thanks." I said, "It's okay," that kind of thing. So then we parted, and I made my way back through the crowd, and I was leaving the crowd, and I saw Travis standing at the edge of the crowd, waiting for me, and I just smiled as I walked up to him and went to grab his hand, and his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist instead.
Was he angry with you?
He seemed upset, but not at first. He didn't seem incredibly angry until he started talking, and then I realized he was pretty mad.
Okay. How did you said he grabbed your wrist. Did he grab it hard, or was he just holding it?
He grabbed it hard, but not painfully.
Did it ever become painful?
Not at that moment. He was just squeezing very tightly, but it didn't hurt.
And you said that he was not that angry at that time, but later you understood him to be more angry. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, as soon as he began to talk, I could tell he was pissed off.
And how could you tell that? Without telling us what he said, how could you tell that?
By his demeanor, his tone, his words. And
Was he yelling?
no, he was kind of speaking very sternly, sort of under his breath.
Okay. And was he unhappy with the fact that you were talking to Mr. Abdallah?
Yes, he was. Well, he wanted to know what we were talking about.
Okay. And when you learned what you were talking about, is that when you became more angry?
Yes.
Okay. And you were talking about the idea that you deserve better, right?
Yes.
Okay. Moving back then to you being in Mesa and the sexual encounters, you said they were happening more frequently. Was this on a daily basis, a near daily basis?
I'd say 3 to 4 times a week.
And apart from those instances on the porch, you mentioned instances of his home. How did that work?
If it was the middle of the day and nobody was home, then there wasn't as much of a need to keep it a secret or keep it within the confines of the bedroom. But if people were home and his roommates were home, we had to be very quiet. He used to complain that his house was made a KB home and that the walls were thin and his roommates could hear every sound, so we had to be quiet.
So it was pretty obvious to you that your presence there in the home was a secret to his roommates, right? Supposed to be.
Well, maybe our activities. I parked right in the driveway.
Okay. So it wasn't your presence in the home, it was the fact that he was having sex with you that was the secret.
Yeah.
Okay. Were precautions made? You mentioned daytime, sometimes this happened at night as well, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Were there precautions made for you getting out the next morning? Did you stay the night? How did that work?
I usually stayed the night, but I left pretty early.
Was that intentional to avoid the roommates, knowing you spent the night?
Yes, because, well, usually, yes.
Okay. Did you know, well, this, using, I'm
It's on occasion with people from his church. Sometimes I'd go on group dates, but I definitely didn't have the impression that he was in a committed relationship with anybody.
And you told us just a few moments ago that you didn't believe that the two of you, or at least you didn't characterize it as a committed relationship, right?
No, I didn't.
Were you dating other people?
I went on dates on occasion, but nothing that became repeated, so nothing that blossomed into any kind of relationship.
To your knowledge, did Travis know about any of these dates you had with other individuals?
He found out about one, two, actually, early on, if we're talking the same time period.
Okay. And in this time period, this late 2007 time period, these dates you went on, did he react positively or negatively to knowing that you went on these other dates?
One, he just teased me, and the other one very negatively.
You weren't in a relationship with him. What was the problem?
The one that he reacted negatively to was a guy that he hated.
Who was that?
His name is John Dixon.
So Mr. Alexander believed, or would it be your impression that Mr. Alexander believed that he had a right to tell you who you could date at this time period?
Objection being.
He just specifically didn't want me to date that guy.
Okay. And was that okay with you for Mr. Alexander to dictate whom you dated?
Objection in this case, the evidence, she never indicated that he dictated, just that he didn't want her to date the guy.
Rephrase your question.
Okay, so you go out on a date, you're not his girlfriend. You go out on a date with somebody named John Dixon, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Alexander doesn't like Mr. Dixon, right?
Yes.
So because of that, you're not supposed to date John Dixon because Travis doesn't like him?
Not date him and not even be his friend.
Because Travis says so, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So you could date who you wanted unless Travis told you no, right?
Yeah, it seemed that way.
And all the time when he's having sex with you behind closed doors or on your porch, right?
Objection. foundation as to when he's having this sex and foundation as to when he dated John Dixon. It'd be different
Time
times.
period, Judge.
No, he can't testify. She can't, not him.
Sustained.
Fall of 2007. He comes over, he ejaculates on your face, throws candy at you, has you having sex behind closed doors, and you're not in a committed relationship, right? The fall of 2007, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
That's the same time period you dared to defy Mr. Alexander and go out on a date with John Dixon, right?
Objection, Ms. Stacy's testimony. She didn't say that she defied him. He was just upset about it. The characterization is what's objectionable.
Sustained, rephrase.
When did you go out with John Dixon?
It was actually right before the fall, late August, I think the very last weekend in August.
So Mr. Alexander expressed his anger in the fall of 2007 about you going on a date with Mr. Dixon, right?
Yes, he found out the morning we were leaving for Havasupai.
Okay. But it didn't stop him from having sex with you, right?
No.
Ejaculating on your face didn't stop him from doing that, right?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
No, it didn't stop him from that.
And it didn't stop him from going to Havasupai with you, right?
No.
Did it stop you from dating John Dixon again?
Yes.
Did it stop you from really dating anyone else again?
I went on a couple more dates during that time and on through the next year.
Okay. Did you tell Travis about those, or did you try to keep those a secret?
No, I learned to stop telling him anything about my social life regarding that. I didn't tell him about John. He found out.
Okay. I have to ask again, with this state of affairs, why not cut the proverbial cord? Why not break up with this guy who's telling you you can date him, you can't date him? Why not put an end to it?
Well, I mean, right now we're kind of focusing on the negative things. There were things he did that made me feel like $1 million. Very
Describe
special.
those things for us.
It was less what he did and just more how he treated me at times. He would say little things that were sentimental and had meaning between us. He got me little gifts, nothing expensive, but it was more the thought and just the gestures that he did. And he still would allude to the fact that he wanted to marry me, even though I don't know that he was very serious.
Kept telling you things you wanted to hear?
Yeah, he did.
I promise you. Oh, come on, Jodi. Come on. Maybe I'll marry you someday, right?
No, it wasn't quite like that.
How was it?
If I did something that he liked or that pleased him in some kind of way, like something I said or something I did, he would just look at me kind of with this enigmatic smile and say, "Marry me." And it wasn't like an actual proposal, but it was kind of a joke, but I took it as a compliment.
Why would you take that as a compliment?
Because he only said those things when I did something that would merit me being a good wife, potentially.
I'm sorry, the last part you said?
Being a good wife. Like, if I did something that might be in line with that, I took it as a compliment because that was my goal at the time. And that's what I wanted to become.
Okay. Did you want to become his wife? Travis's wife?
That was my desire for a while until probably after Havasu Pai.
Okay. What changed after Havasu Pai that made you decide, I don't want to marry this guy?
My feelings for him didn't necessarily change, but in my mind, we had such a bad fight that morning. He said some very ugly things to me that it was a boundary we had never crossed before. And I couldn't imagine marrying somebody that had said those things to me, or raising children with a man who their father had said those things to their mother, kind of thing. That's how I imagined it.
What kind of things are we talking about?
He said,
Objection, hearsay.
Not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, the effect on the listener.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take the afternoon recess. Please be back in the designated area at 3:15. Please remember the admonition. Please stand for the jury. You may be seated. The record will show the jury has left the courtroom. You may step down, Ms. Arias. Counsel, please approach. Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. You may continue.
Thank you, Judge. Jodi, before the break, we were talking about an argument that you had with Mr. Alexander before the Havasu Pai trip, and when he had learned that you went out on a date with John Dixon, right?
yes.
Okay. The argument you had with him, where did that take place?
I believe it started downstairs over the backpack. That's kind of what started it. And I took the backpack upstairs into his bathroom to look for my toothbrush. Everything had been repacked, so I didn't know what was what. And I just woke up, wanted to brush my teeth before we hit the road. And he came into the bathroom, and the argument escalated in the bathroom.
Okay. This was the argument that Mr. Freeman testified was all about makeup and personal care products, right?
Yes, but it wasn't makeup.
Okay. What sort of things, you said that Travis said things to you up in that bathroom that made you realize that that wasn't the type of person that you wanted to marry, right? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. What things did he say to you that made you feel that way?
It was only one thing specifically. As our argument escalated and got more and more, by this point I was brushing my teeth. I'd found my toothpaste and toothbrush, and I was crying. He had found out about my date because I wrote it in my journal, regrettably, and when he repacked it, he read it. And I was incredibly detailed, but it talked about the time I... I'm sorry, I got distracted.
Argument, and then she wants to tell us about a journal and that sort of thing. She's just not being responsive, so objection, beyond the scope of the question, non-responsive.
Restate your question.
Sure, Jodi. What did Travis say to you that made you realize you didn't want to marry? What specifically?
He said, "Fuck you."
What else? Say anything else?
Well, he said a lot of things about John. He was calling him John Dickhead instead of John Dixon. That was his nickname for him for the last year. And after he said F you, he turned on his heels and left the bathroom.
Why'd you still decide to go to Havasu Pai with him?
Well, there was a lot of crying and that kind of thing. Dan came in the bathroom. I didn't realize he was in there. I was blowing my nose and crying and was embarrassed to be arguing in front of him. So Dan kind of was like, Dan and Desiree were kind of like the glue. They sort of said, you know, hey, let's just calm down, let's try to get along, let's try to get on this trip. I wanted to go on the trip, but I contemplated just going home because it was really bad. And
Because it was really, what was that?
it was really bad between us. I was mortified, like we had never argued to this extent, and much less in front of somebody else. So I was very embarrassed, and I felt very ashamed, and so I stayed in the bathroom for a little while trying to calm myself down, and then I don't remember how it all came together, but eventually we all were in the garage in the car, and we were beginning to drive off.
So the plan was to suck it up, so to speak, and go to Havasu play anyway, right?
Objection is characterized as testimony leading.
Overruled, you may answer.
Yes.
And it sounds like during this trip, you two were acting like boyfriend and girlfriend again, right?
During some parts, we were kind of, well, I felt like my feelings were hurt, so I wasn't very responsive to him at that time. I wasn't ignoring him, I wasn't being rude or anything, but I just felt like an emotional chasm between us.
Okay. And this trip was when again?
It would be probably the second weekend in September.
Okay. Let's move back then towards the late part of 2007. We were talking about how the usual course of conduct was late night rendezvous, be they on your porch, be they in his bedroom, right? And that happened, you said, about 3 to 4 times a week, right?
Objection has been answered.
Overruled, you may answer.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And at this point in time, and now we're talking late 2007, has he been physically abusive with you? Other than the one incident you told us about?
Late 2007? There
Yeah.
was a point in October, late October, where he pushed me down on the ground in his bedroom, but I landed on my knees. I didn't like fall over or anything.
You say he pushed you down on the ground in his bedroom or your bedroom?
His bedroom.
Not that there'd be any excuse for it, but what did you understand his motivation to be?
Objection argument is characterizing it. Not that there would be any excuse for it.
Sustained.
What was his reason for pushing you over?
We were arguing.
Objection, hearsay. She's going to tell us what he said.
No.
Overruled.
We were arguing, and I got up to leave, and he wasn't done making his point, and he wanted to stay, and he wanted me to stay so I guess he could finish yelling at me.
You guess it was what? I didn't understand the last part.
He wanted me to, I got up to leave his bedroom, and he blocked the door and took my arms and shoved me down, and I landed on my knees, and he said, "You're not going." Okay.
Not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted and excited utterance.
Overruled.
What did Mr. Alexander say when he pushed you down?
He said no like 5 times fast, like, no. You're not going anywhere.
You weren't allowed to leave, right?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Were you allowed to leave?
I didn't push the issue at that point. I tried to leave one more time and he stopped me again. And then on the 3rd time I tried to leave, he didn't stop me.
Okay. The second time you tried to leave, you said he stopped you. Did he grab you and throw you down again?
No, he just put his hands on my shoulders.
Okay. Forcefully?
Yes.
Call you names?
Yes.
Like what?
That was such an awful fight. I don't remember all the names he called. I just remember one thing that really sticks out is he was insulting my family.
Again, so he was asked if she was called any names. Now we're talking about the family.
Okay, well, let's ask this. How was he insulting your family? Was he calling them names?
Yes.
What was he saying about your family?
He was saying that my brother was a faggot because his name is Carl.
What else?
I told him that he was named after my grandfather, and he said, "Your grandfather must be a faggot too, then." That's just something I remember specifically that bothered me. It's not that, I mean, I wouldn't care if they're gay, but that's Travis's way of issuing a deep insult to him. That's insulting.
Did he say anything about your other family members?
Not
Did you
in,
recall?
not in that specific argument.
Okay. Now, this specific argument where he grabs you, throws you down, restrains you a second time when you get to leave, what was the thing that was so important that Travis wanted to do? Insult your family, or was there something else?
He just kept ranting and raving and yelling.
You don't remember about what?
Honestly, my brain sort of went on freeze, and I don't remember a lot of what he was saying. He was just yelling.
Okay. Why wasn't this day, the day he throws you down, the day he grabs you, the day he won't let you leave the room, the day he insults what he believes are insults to your family, why wasn't that the last day you saw Travis? Last day.
Well, it was going to be because when I was leaving the stairs, or going downstairs, he followed me all the way out to my car, just saying one mean thing after another, and then his tone changed to something very friendly, but it was like artificial friendly, and he said, "I have a great idea." And he said, "How about you move to Antarctica and never call me again?" And I said, "Minus Antarctica, sure." And I was getting into the car, and after my leg got into the car, he slammed the door hard, and I started to drive away. So I thought we were not going to talk at that point. It was a very low point for me. Throughout the fall, I had been feeling suicidal, so I thought that was kind of the point where I decided I wanted to go through with that. So I called my friend Matt because he had guns, and I was going to ask him if I could borrow one because I wanted to kill myself. And he could tell, I don't know, he called a suicide hotline and had me call them, and he called my dad or my parents. And as I was on the phone with Matt, Travis began calling again as I was driving back home. And I wanted to answer because Travis always apologized after he had been very mean, and I thought maybe this is his apology. But sometimes it took a while to calm down, so it could just be more of the same, of his anger. So I hung up anyway with Matt, and I answered the phone, and Travis was very sweet and very calm, and he was telling me to come back, and that he was too harsh on me, and he felt bad, and I needed to help him make his bed. I had been there doing laundry and cleaning the house when that fight started, so I hadn't finished making the bed, and all the sheets were out of the dryer.
So he wanted you to get back to your duties as a maid, right?
Judge, I'm reading, she just said that. Okay.
Is that right?
The implication was more, come help me make my bed so we can make up.
Make up meaning have sex?
Yes.
Did he request this French maid outfit again?
No.
So he makes this call, you begin to feel better. You go back over to his house?
Yes, I'm telling him no, but at the same time I'm turning around in the turnabout that's in my neighborhood.
What's that?
I'm saying no at the same time that I'm actually doing it anyway. I'm going through the turnabout on the way to my house, but instead I go all the way through it and turn around.
Why'd you turn around, Jodi?
he was being the nice person that I was, I guess, craving. Like, I had felt like a writhing ant under a magnifying glass for the last 3 hours. It was a long fight, and now he had relented, and he was being nice, and he was implying that his feelings would be hurt if I didn't come over. He was saying it very sweet, almost baby talk, but not quite. And so I came back to his house.
Did you have a sexual interaction with him after you came back to his house to make up?
Yes, we made the bed, and then, yes.
And then yes, what?
We had anal sex that night, but it was kind of loving. I mean, he said, "I love you," and he whispered those things in my ear while he was doing that, and, you know.
I want to ask, there was an incident talked about earlier where you walked into Travis's house and Lisa Andrews was there. Do you remember hearing about that during this trial?
Yes.
Was that around this same time period when all these things were going on?
Yes, it was right before or after we were in New Mexico.
Okay. So you get back from this trip in New Mexico, Exhibit 431. You're acting as a happy couple in New Mexico. How is it that you came to Travis's house the evening that Lisa Andrews saw you there?
Well, this might have been before New Mexico, but it was all around the same time. I had been hired at P.F. Chang's in the summer, and his roommate, John Hepworth, was always talking about how much he liked the honey chicken on their menu. It was his favorite dish. And so one night, it was a Monday night, which would be family home evening in the church. I worked, though. For short, it's called FHE. And I got off work early because it was Monday night and it was slow. And there was an extra honey chicken that was getting thrown away, so the chef said I could have it. So it was still fresh. It was in a to-go container. I put it into a to-go container. And I had taken food home before, and I usually offered to split it with my roommates. They never really wanted it. It was still early, so I knew, or I assumed, Travis was at church, and so I wasn't going to call him. But I called John, because he lives close by, and I said, "Do you want half of this honey chicken?" And he said yes, because he liked it. And so I was going to go over there, split it with him, and then go back home. Because if you put it in the fridge, it gets real soggy. It's breaded and glazed. And so I headed over. Well, he said Travis wasn't home. I asked him, I said, "Is Travis home yet?" He said no. So I started driving over to his house, and I pulled into the driveway in the same place where I always go. And I always came and went in his house without knocking. It was just something I did, and a lot of friends always did. And so I walked into the house with the container of honey chicken in my hands, and I'm walking down. It's kind of a walkway with tile. There's a living room here, and as I was coming toward the kitchen, which is just beyond that, there's a wall just beyond that. I was going to round the kitchen to get a plate for John. John was on the couch over here watching TV, and I came around the kitchen, and Travis was standing there with another girl. I didn't see who the girl was because I just saw hair, and he was standing in front of her. So I was mortified. I was like, oh my gosh. So I immediately turned and walked right back out, straight out the front door. And I got in my car and I left. And I was really embarrassed because I thought he wasn't home. And I started driving. I drove west down Elliott, and then I turned north on Signal Butte. And right as I turned north on Signal Butte, there was a car that came right up behind me with their high beams on, and they were right up on the tail end of my car.
And who was in that car?
Well, I didn't know at first. I thought it was somebody that had to go somewhere fast. So I was coming up on an LDS chapel that was on the left side of the street, and then across from the street from that was a turnout. So I assumed I'm just going to drive a a few more yards and then pull over in this turnout, but this car pulled over the double yellow line and sped up, and so I thought, wow, they're really in a hurry, and then pulled in front of me and braked really hard, and I almost hit the car, and then that's when my headlights hit the paint, and I could see it was purple, and it was BMW, it was Travis's car. So he pulled then into the turnabout, and I assumed he wanted me to pull over because of that, so I pulled in behind him.
Okay. Did he offer explanation for what you had just walked in on?
After I asked, yeah.
During that discussion, did he admit to you that he was dating Lisa Andrews?
No, he didn't say who it was. I didn't see who it was. He just said a girl from his ward was there, and she wanted to see his house, and he was just giving her a tour.
Did he invite you back to the home?
Not at that point, but he gave me a hug, and he squeezed my butt and said, "You're coming over later tonight, right?" Kind of like that.
And what did that mean to you? What were you coming over there later that evening for?
To hang out, sex, pretty much.
After he was done with this date with Lisa Andrews, you were to come over to have sex with him. Is that what we're saying here?
Yeah.
Now, late 2007, you talk about how this relationship is going on and on and on. Are you still living in Mesa in early 2008?
Yes.
Are you having sexual intercourse with Mr. Alexander in 2008, early 2008?
Yes. Well, yes, not vaginal.
Okay.
So much.
Not vaginal intercourse.
No.
Was that, you'd had it before, was there a reason you weren't having it at that time?
Yes. The first time I was asleep. The second time was in August 2007. That was consensual. And I knew we had gone all the way, so obviously that was pretty black and white that was not okay. So I confided in Rachel. I didn't want to tell her that we went all the way, but I said I think Travis and I might have gone too far, even though I knew we'd gone too far. I wanted to get her advice. And she asked me how far we'd gone, so I thought oral sex was okay, so I threw that out there. I was like, well, we've had oral sex. And her jaw dropped almost to the floor, and she freaked out and said, "You have to go to your bishop right now." And I didn't know that. And she said, "Travis has to go too. You need to do it right away and get right back on the right track and go tell him right now and wear your seatbelt." You know, the implication being you don't want to get in a car accident and die before you repent. It was that serious to her. And so I didn't know that. So I got in the car and called Travis and went over there and tried.
So to make a long story short here, you didn't want to have vaginal sex because of the vow of chastity or the law of chastity, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did anything happen in January of 2008 that changed your relationship with Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
What happened?
Objection, if we could have the foundation, if we could have the date and the time.
I'm asking what happened in January 2008. She can explain.
Council approach. You may continue.
Ms. Arias, this event would happen in January 2008. Before we go into the particulars of it, do you remember where it occurred?
Yes.
Where?
In his bedroom.
Do you remember the date that it occurred?
It was on a Monday, and it was late January 2008. I think it was around the 21st.
Okay. What did you see on the 21st or late January of 2008? Or I should say this. What happened on the 21st of January 2008 that changed the course of your relationship with Travis?
objection, lack of foundation, if we could have a time, morning, noon, afternoon?
She can explain the story, Judge.
All right, overruled.
I got off work. I was working at Mimi's Cafe at that point in Mesa. I got off work and came over to his house and helped him. He was loading boxes into the attic. He was just rearranging stuff, he said. So I was helping him. I was just handing them up to him. And we were hanging out for a while. He disappeared in the attic for a minute, so I was waiting for him. And then he kind of popped out and said boo and scared me and laughed about that. And then he came down the ladder and he handed me a little porcelain, it was a white porcelain angel that he had. And he handed it to me and called me an angel and gave it to me, and I thought that was sweet. And so I went and put it next to my purse, which was on the dresser in his bedroom. And we hung out a little bit longer downstairs in his office, and then I was leaving. So I ran upstairs, got my purse, shut the bedroom door after I'd already said goodbye to him, and I left. And then as I was driving back home, I realized I left the porcelain angel there. And Travis I knew he would, just knowing him, he would call me and make me feel guilty about it, or in a joking way, but in a way that I wouldn't live it down for a while.
So what did you do?
So I thought of getting it later, but because of that pattern, I turned around to go get it. And I called him real quick on his cell phone, he didn't answer. Called him real quick on his house phone, he didn't answer. I hadn't been gone 10 minutes, so I didn't think it was a big deal. I just went back there, I walked in and I ran upstairs and I went into his bedroom to grab it.
And what did you see when you got there?
I walked in and Travis was on the bed masturbating, and I got really embarrassed. Even though we'd been intimate like more times than I could count, it was just kind of awkward walking in on him like that. And I was headed toward the dresser, but then I stopped and I was trying to think of something funny or witty to say, like, do you still need my help or something? And he started grabbing at something on the bed, and I realized they were papers. And as he was grabbing the papers, one kind of went sailing off the bed, and it fell in that chaotic pattern that paper falls, and it landed face up near my feet, and it was a photograph.
What was in the photograph? What was the photograph of?
It was a picture of a little boy.
Could you guess how old first the little boy was?
Oh, 5-ish, 5, 6. I'm not a good judge of age.
Did you recognize the little boy?
No.
Was the little boy dressed?
He was dressed in underwear, like briefs.
After you saw this, what did you do next?
I was frozen there for a minute. Well, maybe not a whole minute, but I didn't know how to react. It kind of seemed like one of those dreams where something is really off, but you just can't figure it out. And so I left the angel there on the dresser, and I turned cold, and he called my name, and I just ran. I didn't stay, and I got in my car and started driving home again. Sorry.
Did you say he called you a name or he called your name?
He called my name.
Okay.
He said, wait. I called my name.
So I'm sorry, you were driving away from his home. How did you feel about what you saw?
I felt nauseated. I drove all the way home, and I was trying to drive fast enough to get to, well, I was trying not to pull over to throw up. I got home, and I was hitting the garage door opener about half a block away so that it would be open, and I pulled right into the garage and ran inside and threw up in the bathroom.
Did you speak? Did Travis make further attempts to call you after you saw what you saw?
Yes.
How soon?
After I cleaned myself up, I went back out to my car to get my purse and my phone, and I saw that there were some missed calls from him. Like 4, maybe 3 or 4.
Was this, why wasn't this moment in time, why wasn't this the end of your relationship with him?
Well, I wasn't even thinking anything along those lines at that time. I was confused and I was crying and I didn't really know what to make of all that. So I went for a drive. Before, when I didn't answer the phone, and when he called repeatedly, he would come over to the house because I didn't live far. And I didn't want to be at the house when he came over. I wasn't sure how to talk to him or what to say. So I left and I drove around for a while in Mesa, and then I ended up at the Temple Visitor Center, and I hung out in there for a little while. And I just was collecting my thoughts and not really meditating, but just trying to figure out what to do next and how to handle that.
Did you get, or did you come to a decision as far as what to do next?
Well, I wanted to, I couldn't imagine like never talking to him again.
Why not?
That would just be, if we never spoke again after that point, I would feel unsettled, and I don't know. I wanted to let him explain at least. I went out and checked my phone again. My phone was turned off in the visitor center. So I went out and checked my voicemail, and there was that frantic voicemail from him finally, and there were more missed calls. And he said, just come over and talk to me and that kind of thing. And so there was something.
Well, again, Jodi, let me address the question. And perhaps it's difficult, but why would it be, you just, from what you told us, you saw him masturbating to the image of a child. Why would it have been a problem for you? Or why could you imagine not having any more contact with him after that point in time?
When I was thinking in the temple, I've heard in the past that usually people who have problems like that were hurt when they were children, and I kept thinking, what if he was hurt when he was a kid? And it made me angry to think of him as a kid and somebody violating him, and just really made me mad. And so I tried to mitigate it in my head in that way, and I wanted to talk to him and find out what was wrong with, what was going on with him. So,
Did you return his phone calls, or what happened next?
I called him back finally after a while, and we agreed to meet up. We were going to swap cars for a family home evening, and
But you were going to swap cars for family home evening, right?
Yes.
So what you told us?
yes,
So he could have your car, or you could have his?
both. At the time I was driving his car, but he didn't want to drive my car to church with people. He wanted to take his own car.
Okay. So he was the one going to family home evening, right?
Yes,
Okay. Same day he got caught masturbating to images of children, he was going to family home evening, right?
yes.
Okay. So you return to his home, and you're going to trade cars. Did you just get your car and get out of there?
We never hooked up before family home meeting. I had a migraine and I needed to just sleep, and I don't know, I woke up later in the evening and I went over to his house later that night.
Okay. You go to his house later that night. Do you talk with him?
Yes.
Do you ask him about what you saw?
I didn't really have to ask him, I just was silent and let him do the talking, mostly.
What did he say?
Objection, hearsay.
Can we approach, Judge?
You may.
This conversation you were having, or had with Mr. Alexander, after you viewed his masturbating to an image of a young child, what was the subject matter of the conversation?
Mostly about, he was explaining to me.
Without telling us what he said, what was he explaining to you?
Objection, hearsay, because if she's explaining, then she's telling us what he said. She can talk about what the subject matter was and then the effect, which is what we discussed.
Thanks.
After that conversation, did you come away with the understanding that Mr. Alexander had a sexual interest in children?
Yes.
Did you come away with the understanding that it was boys and girls, or was it just one or the other?
Objection, hearsay, not advocating for the substance, but they're just prefacing it by saying, is it your understanding?
Rephrase.
Did you believe him to have an interest in young boys?
Objection, hearsay. Overruled.
Yes.
Did you believe him to have an interest in young girls?
I already knew he was interested in young girls, but they were like sexually mature girls, but minors.
Okay. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to finish this conversation. Did he express, or did you come away with the understanding that you could help him with this problem?
That's the impression he gave me.
And what was your understanding of how you were to help him with this problem?
He preferred sex with women.
He what?
He preferred sex with women.
Why?
Made him feel normal, more normal.
In this conversation, was there any discussion about why he wanted you to wear the boys' Spider-Man underwear?
That was the reason for it, apparently. That's what he had told me.
The reason being, if I understand you correctly, that he liked pretending that you were a young boy.
I didn't ask him what he was visualizing, but that's,
Objection, it's speculation.
That was your understanding of why he was doing it after the conversation, right?
yes.
Was this the last time you ever spoke with Travis Alexander?
No.
Did you leave right away after this discussion?
No.
Did you submit to a sexual interaction with Mr. Alexander after this discussion?
Yes.
And what sort of interaction was that?
It was sex. It was anal sex.
Why, Jodi, were you willing to submit yourself to sexual interaction with Mr. Alexander, having seen and having heard everything you saw and heard that day?
It's hard to describe because it's very embarrassing, but he seemed very ashamed with himself, and like he didn't want to be that way. It was something he struggled with, and that's not who he wanted to be. It's not who he wanted to be in the future, and he was trying to deal with it. And when he had sex with women, he felt like a normal heterosexual man, and that's what he wanted to be, and that's what he said he was, and that's what I believed him to be. And so when he had sex with women, he felt more normal, and it was preferable to his other deviant urges, I guess you could say.
So, were you doing this to help him?
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, I still loved him.
Did you ever do anything else to try to help him?
Yes.
What was that?
Before I moved back to California, I gave him a pamphlet that I found. There was a stack of them that I found in a mall. And I picked up a few of them because it was about mental health services. I don't remember what the name of it was. It had an 800 number, and it also had a 602 number. And might have had other phone numbers and a website. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it looked like they were services that were complimentary, or maybe not free, but cheap or affordable or something to that effect. I thought maybe he could just talk to some people. I thought it was confidential, and somebody he could talk to that would be able to counsel him, or that had a degree in psychology or some kind of certification in mental health counseling.
Okay. So was this in January 2008 that you found this brochure?
No, it was closer to somewhere in mid to late March. It was before I moved.
Okay. How did he react when you gave him this brochure or pamphlet?
He was upset. It led to an argument. We argued about several subjects that day.
When you say argument, was this verbal or was this physical?
It started off verbal, and then it became physical.
Now, you mentioned him grabbing your wrists at conference, and now we're talking about this incident in March of 2008. Had he been physically abusive with you before March of 2008?
This incident was in April, and yes, he was physically abusive before that.
Okay. Let's talk about that then. This, after he grabbed you at the convention, when was the next time that he was physical with you?
It would have been that argument the night that I got up to leave twice, or 3 times ultimately.
When he wouldn't let you leave the room, when he threw you down?
He pushed me down.
Okay.
Doing it real loud, and some of his spit got in my face. And I mean, he wasn't spitting on me, but as he was talking. And he body slammed me on the floor at the foot of his bed.
What did he do after he slammed you on the floor at the foot of his bed?
Well, it startled me. It didn't hurt, but it startled me. And so I kind of let out an unexpected sound. I guess it could be best described as a yelp, sort of. Can't really explain it. It just was unexpected. So it startled me, and then the impact and the sound came out. And I think he misinterpreted because he said, "Don't act like that hurts." He called me a bitch, and he kicked me in the ribs. And that hurt for real. But he went to kick me again, and I put my hand out and to block his foot, and it clipped my hand and hit my finger.
And he said, hit your finger?
Yes, my left hand.
Okay. So he kicks you once in the ribs, and he goes to kick you in the ribs again, and you try to stop him with your hand, and he kicks your finger, right?
Yes, on the second kick.
What happened after that second kick?
I screamed really loud. I think I yelled out my finger or my hand or something to that effect.
And what happened after you yelled that out?
He stormed out of the room and left, went downstairs.
And what did you do?
I rolled over and sat up and stood up and was holding my wrist. My finger was starting to swell up. I couldn't hear Travis. I didn't know what was going on. He was left very angry. I was in the room. The bedroom door was open. I kind of peeked around the bedroom door on the landing and looked down the stairs. Couldn't see anything. And then the doorbell rang. And so I was listening at the top of the stairs to see who it was. I don't know who it was, but whoever it was, he sent away. And so the front door shut, and then I heard him walking back on the tile. And then I leaned my head back in, and I could hear him climb the stairs, and my anxiety shot through the roof. I didn't know what kind of mood he was in or how he was going to react or what he was intending to do. And he came in, and he seemed visibly more calm, and he could see that I was holding my wrist, and he wanted to see my hand.
Was he yelling at you? Was he assaultive with you after he came back to the room?
No.
What was his demeanor like?
He was calmer, but when he first asked to see my hand, I kind of pulled back a little just as a reaction. And then he said, "Let me see it." But he said it kind of in a snappy, stern way. So I didn't want to provoke him anymore, so I just let him look at my hand.
And you say your hand, was there a particular part of your hand that was injured?
Yes, the ring finger on my left hand.
The which finger?
The ring finger?
Okay. Did you seek medical attention for this injury?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
I didn't have medical insurance, for one. Two, I was worried that maybe the police would get involved if I went down there, or if I guess I could have made up a story, but Travis made a splint for my finger at his house, and I just stayed with that. It was swell. We put ice on it, and he had 3 little popsicle sticks that he broke so that they were the length of my finger, and he tied it onto my finger.
I think it also has to be, as you talked about, why you didn't get medical attention. Why didn't you call the police?
I would have never called the police on Travis.
Why not?
I couldn't imagine doing something like that.
Why not?
It would have felt like treachery. I wouldn't have betrayed him. I was loyal to him.
You just mentioned the word loyalty. Given all that you went through, what did you have to be loyal to?
Well, I looked at him as someone who had his own issues that he was struggling with, and I didn't see him as a bad person. I just saw him as somebody who was conflicted and had issues, just like everyone has issues. He just had different issues, and I wanted him to get help. That was one of the conditions we had made the day before. Of course, he didn't want me to say anything, and I promised him I wouldn't say anything as long as you get help, of course, and he said he would. And so I just couldn't imagine doing anything to betray him.
The splint you put on your finger. Let me ask you this. Was the finger broken, as best you could tell?
I believe it was broken.
Okay. Do you still, is that injury still visible on you today?
I think so. It's crooked.
Could you hold up your hand for us so we can see your finger? Hold it up, Jodi, if you can. What do you think about when you see that injury on your hand?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
How do you feel when you see that injury on your hand?
Objection, relevance.
Goes to state of mind and battered women's syndrome, Judge. Jodi, hold that finger up for us again, would you? Would you take a look at it?
Would
Take a
I?
look at your finger.
Yeah.
When you see that, what does that remind you of?
It reminds me of the incident. I try not to think about it,
Try not to think about who.
about the incident,
Okay. Why not?
because it's unpleasant.
You scared when you think about that day?
I don't go too far in my mind with it because it's not very pleasant. It's a very negative experience, and I wish I'd handled it differently.
What do you mean by that? Wish you handled it differently.
Sometimes I regret not making a record of these things, and sometimes I regret not getting medical help because at least it would have healed correctly. And maybe not, it feels arthritic as opposed to any of my other joints.
But it's, you didn't want Travis to get in trouble, right?
Objection, meeting.
Is it correct that you didn't want Travis to get in trouble? That's how you felt?
Objection, meeting.
I definitely didn't want him to get in trouble, and I didn't want anyone to know that that happened between us.
Didn't want anyone to know that. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Because you were embarrassed that he beat you up, right?
Objection, meeting. Notice introducing embarrassment.
Sustained.
Were you embarrassed that he beat you up?
I was more like ashamed.
Ashamed. You felt shame, right?
Objection, meeting. She said she did.
Rephrase.
The shame you felt was part of the reason that you didn't want anyone else to know, right?
Objection, meeting.
Sustained.
Were you thrilled and happy that Travis beat you up?
No,
Did you want to shout it from the rooftops?
definitely not.
Why not?
I just felt, I guess embarrassment is an accurate word, but I just felt it was stronger than embarrassment. I felt very ashamed, and I didn't want people to know that we had this kind of drama in our relationship, this level of problems. And I also felt like I used to judge women that would get into situations like that.
It's completely relevant to why she didn't tell.
I used to think that women that were in situations like that, that it was partially, if not equally, their fault because they kept staying there. And so I went home and I thought, I was disgusted with myself. I felt like, great, now I'm one of those people. Like I was thinking that I got into this situation and here I am just staying, and that I had become that thing that I used to judge.
You realized at this point in time you were one of those people. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be back in the jury room by 10:25 tomorrow morning. We will start promptly at 10:30. Please remember the admonition. Have a nice evening. You are excused.